Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Remote CEO Life podcast, the podcast for freedom seeking entrepreneurs ready to ditch the 9 to 5 and build a business on their terms and create a life they love and don't need a holiday from. I'm your host, Sophie, and today's episode is something a little bit different. Normally, I'm joined by guests to do interviews or I share my own knowledge with you, but today I wanted to share a little bit behind the scenes. This is going to be really powerful if you are early stages of starting your online business and feeling totally overwhelmed about what offer you are going to put out to the world, who your dream client is, and how the hell you're going to package it all together. This episode is actually a sneaky peek into what it looks like to work with me and be supported through my signature method, the Freedom Model Method. And I'm joined in this episode by one of my lovely clients, Giulia, who is building a business as a holistic health practitioner. And she has built a business offline and she's done all of the work on that offline, but now she wants to take her business online. She's actually a nomad and works and travels the world. She has a few physical in-person businesses, but she really wants to hone in on exactly what her offer can be when she brings her business online. So in this episode, I will share with you a little behind the scenes of one of our sessions together where we were figuring out exactly what offer she wants to bring into the world. So we're going to talk through her story, what she wants to be known for, and I'll help her map out her business idea in a way that's actually sustainable for her lifestyle. And something that Giulia has really realized based on all the work that we've been doing together is that she has to build this business to be specifically catered to the lifestyle that she wants to live, because she does want to continue being a nomad at least the next few years anyway. And she really wants to create that freedom. And let's be honest, freedom is the whole reason probably that we're building these businesses in the first place. So these are the kind of conversations that I actually have pretty much every day with my mentoring clients on a one-on-one basis and through my freedom mapping calls in my group program. So I'm really excited to share this with you because I think if you are starting a service-based business particularly, or a digital product-based business, this is going to have a lot of impact on you. And you are going to get some really good nuggets of information from this conversation that I had with Giulia, because she is exactly where you are in terms of mapping out your offer. And I think we can learn from listening to other people's conversations. And actually, if you have already watched my free masterclass, Find Your Freedom Model, you'll know that you can actually book in for one of these sessions. It's a 30-minute freedom mapping call where I will help you figure out exactly what you are about to bring to life so that you can start taking action to build your online business. So if you are trying to turn your passion into a purpose-led business that works for you, not one that you're working for, then this is definitely the episode for you to listen to. So let's get into it. Thanks, Giulia, for joining me. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the business that you're starting and you're working on right now?
Yes. So, of course, I'm trying to start my online business. And yeah, I'm getting more clear about, of course, what bring to the world and to the online world, especially. And I'm currently trying to work on my offer and the target audience. And I feel that this is a bit more the challenge that I'm facing, because I feel that, of course, I kind of a lot to do, kind of research of the other competitors and their own offer, and will also align with what I want to bring and what I want to offer.
And what is it that you want to bring and offer?
That's a good question, because I feel that I'm still figuring out. So that's why I'm taking more time at the moment to try to explore the different options. And at the same time, going back to the masterclass and really remind myself what is that is going to be sustainable for me over time. So what are the offer that I, can really sustain over time, like based on my lifestyle and my, of course, end goals in the business and in life together.
Yeah. And tell me what, in terms of the business that you're wanting to start, like what is the number one skill that you want to bring into the business that you've already got? What's the thing that you're most excited to kind of bring into that business? And what lifestyle are you hoping to achieve based on the business that you're going to set up?
So for me, it's key to bring all my knowledge in a way that's helping clients or anyone seeking help with their health or their self. And then when it comes like the complication of what I want to offer, because that's what I feel that I struggle a bit more to create an offer that it's more specific, because as health psychologist, holistic therapy and yoga instructor, I want to bring different kind of knowledge under the same umbrella, of course, which is like mostly can categorize as holistic health, but it's a lot about as well like mindset and cognitive process, and there's like the physical part, the mental part, and the more spiritual or energetic part.
Mm. If you could go back to your journey with these practices and the things that you've obviously learned, obviously you've studied in this field, but if you could go back to your own personal journey within this, like what was the first thing that you needed to know before you kind of moved on to the rest of it? Like, what was the first thing, first practice that you got into before you discovered the whole world of kind of like self-development, health and healing?
Well, my journey, it's been long, but I feel that, of course, it started very, I say like more medical, like very clinical, because like, of course, I study psychology and then I took a more specific but generic like master in social health and organizational psychology. So it was a lot of cognitive process and like more neuroscience and psychodiagnose and very much clinical. And then when like, of course, the shift came when I did my yoga training, but I also went through therapy myself, which was still very clinical. And then I realized how all the physical aspect or more spiritual, energetical aspect is not treated in the traditional therapy. So then is when I started shifting and integrating and doing other training in, let's say, more holistic health. So including the physical body and the spiritual body too.
Of those, then, like, which one is the one that you're most passionate about to start? The reason I'm asking these questions is because in an ideal world, when we start business, ideally we want you to be known for one thing, and that doesn't mean that you are just that one thing. You can be lots of different things. The easiest thing to do is to build a business based on the one main thing that you really want to be known for, and then you can kind of branch that out into other different aspects along the way. It's not to say you just have to have one offer. You don't. You can have multiple.
Yes.
We want to get to the core root of your business. So of all of the things that you want to be specifically known for, like what would you say that looks like for you?
Yeah, so I could break it down in a way that health psychology itself is that kind of has the health is seen in the biopsychosocial model is the combination of the wellness into mental, physical, and spiritual. I feel that also my branch is like specialized in more like how the mind process affect the body. So it's that kind of transfer, and of course, like for example, like how the stress response, right? It's not only mental, but like how physical that is. So it's that link. So it's still like a blend or at least two of that, but that's the passage, like the key passage of
Yeah. So
psychology.
you want someone to go, basically you want whoever comes into your world, you want them to go on a journey of understanding the mental aspect so that they can then go on the journey of healing the physical as well, essentially, is
Yeah,
what you're
because I
kind of
feel
saying.
that's key. Because if there's no awareness and if there's no the right mindset, right, and also the opening or just like the realization that what's happening to the body in a way start from mind process, that of course there's not like this understanding. And an example, it can be also like very easy, like very simple, like how panic attack works, right? It's just like physiological response, but that is like the mind that gets triggered because it cannot give you an answer of what is happening in the body. But at the end, it's like it's happening in the body, but it's like how you react to the body response. So it
Yeah,
comes back to the mind itself.
for sure. Okay. So in terms of the offer then, we know that you need to take somebody on that journey, right? We know that you need to do some kind of like education on the mental aspect, which then takes them on more of like that physical, maybe even like a spiritual journey, and puts all of the like practices in place. So all could kind of be, obviously we've spoken outside of this to go through like some different options. you would prefer, obviously, the lifestyle that you're trying to create for yourself is more like freedom, like in terms of location, right? So you don't want something that's going to tie you to a location. So offering this as like a physical thing doesn't make any sense. So having something online. Now, the other question I guess that I've got is like, how much time do you want to spend on a daily basis working on the business? Or are you more willing to like put a bit of time in up front and then see it kind of like sell a bit more passively later on down the line?
So of course I have a big vision of different offer, and I do believe that I'm willing to take different steps based on the different offer that I wants to give. I do believe that to start with, should be consistent, especially now that I have more time and maybe the motivation to start with. So I do believe that, yeah, like putting some sort of like fixed, more or less time, like hours daily will be very helpful for me without stressing too much. Eventually, I know that I will have a product that I could spend some time in creating, and then just to have like a bit more passive income out of it. But for me, it will be like ideally have a combination of different options.
Yeah. My initial thought, like as you're talking about it, is to basically create, because I think there's so many different routes that you could go down. You can go down memberships, you can go down courses, you can go down one-on-ones, oh, so many different ways, right? So my initial thought process would be that you've got people, you need to take people on that journey, right? And I think you can do that through like different videos that you can create, written content, guides, that kind of thing. My first step for you would be to first of all map out what does that exact journey look like, because that exact journey of like how are you going to take someone from, because they've just become aware, right, that they need to make some changes. So like from that point of, oh, I'm just becoming self-aware, where do I need to start, like what point do I need to start at, and where's my end point, like what's the kind of end goal for like your offer. So I would an offer of like what you're going to sell, I would start mapping out each part of that process and say, right, this is where they are today, and this is where they need to get to, or where they want to get to, and then you can kind of work out all of the bit in between. Then my first reaction in terms of like actually monetizing that journey would be to create a suite of trainings, so like that take somebody through every single stage of that journey. Because if you have the training, let's say it's like a 10-step program to go from like this point, and you define what does that point that they're coming to you look like, because I'll get back to why we're talking about this in a second in terms of your customer and your research and stuff. But the first point when they come to you, let's just say they are really struggling, like with low energy. Maybe they have a little bit of anxiety on a daily basis, but they're starting to become aware of it. And you want to take them on a journey to get their energy levels back up, essentially. So think about like the one problem that you're going to solve, rather than thinking about like what you want this business to look like. Think about the specific problem that you want to target, and just focus on one problem for now, because like I say, you can branch into different problems later on down the line, but look at the most common problem that you can solve for people through this offer. And from that, we're going to say, right, this is the problem, this is the end goal that we want them to go from A to B, and map out all the steps in between. Create, and you don't have to do this immediately, obviously, we're going to go through all the steps first, but the best thing I think you could do is create a training for each one of those steps. And like I said, it could be written, it could be verbal, it could be a video, it could just be like guides, written guides, something like that. And for each point of that, the reason you're going to create a training for each stage of this is because when you have that material, either you can package that up and sell it as a course, or you could package it up and sell it as a subscription model where people get on-demand access if they're in the subscription. Or if you are doing one-on-ones with people, you can use that content as your baseline, and then you can do one-on-ones in addition to that to offer the support. But all of that training is basically the foundation of your offer. And then it doesn't actually really matter which model you choose, because you're going to have the baseline, right? And then later on down the line, you might start testing a course and it doesn't work for you, or you might then be like, oh, let me test the membership model, and you can figure it out. Or you could have both. You could sell it as a whole course platform and say, right, you can get, this is the whole course, and you can go step by step. Or maybe you just want to tap into it for a little while and you just pay this monthly subscription. So you could actually have both models, and then at the same time you could then upsell into one-on-one. So you might start with like that low entry level price point of the membership, upsell into the full course because they're going to get the full program, and then upsell again into the one-to-one you that's going to take you through that journey at the personal level. But I think your starting point, the reason why it probably feels so overwhelming is because you're trying to create an offer, a full offer to sell when you don't actually have the material that's within that first. So my first step for you would be to map out that journey from A to B and all of the steps that go in between. And then I think it's going to become more clear to you like how you want to sell that offer. And then at the same time as that, you're going to start identifying who that person is, right? So I think you can, instead of thinking like, oh, where do they live? Like, how old are they? Like, how much money have they got to buy? And like all of the specific details of that person, I would more define this person based on the problem that they have. Because like you said, you could target so many different areas, you could target so many different types of people. But I think actually for you specifically, because of the niche of this business, I think it's better for you to think about like, well, how is this person showing up on a daily basis? They've got anxiety. Are they doom scrolling social media? Are they going to the gym? What steps are they taking? Are they going to their 9 to 5 job and finding it really miserable and excruciating? Like, paint a picture of that person based on the challenge that they are currently struggling with. And I think that then you're going to be able to start building out a more clear picture of who it is you're targeting, because I think particularly when it comes to like the health and wellness industry, like you said, it could target such a broad audience that it's really hard to narrow it down, which is why I think for you it would be better to focus more specifically on the problem rather than the person.
That's very helpful indeed. Because like
That
exactly like yeah, makes sense. Because like for me was just like when it comes to define ideal client and like needs to be very specific because that will help eventually to create the offer. But for me, that specificality that always is my struggle in general. But when it comes to an audience, right, I don't want to, and I see this in this way, which is I know it's not, but I see that I don't want to cut anyone else, like anyone out that is seeking kind of help in their health issues or health issues, like so it can be mindset or more body related. So I feel that exactly like I could focus more on the problems and the solution and the journey that I can take around that. And I can still be, I don't know, can I still be a bit broad? So when you talk about like anxiety, of course, I can talk more about like the nervous system, like a stress response and how that affects. Right, of course, like anxiety, panic attack, or like burnout, even. And it's all about like prevention and promotion of lifestyle and techniques and tools that can help that.
you can keep it broad, and you can call it, you can go into as much detail as you want around the problem. My other question would be like, well, who do you want to work with? Because like you don't want to work, like you're saying you don't want to cut off anybody that wants access to this, which I agree with. Like there's so many people that could get access to this and could benefit from it, but there's also the other side of it, like going back to this whole lifestyle thing, right? Like you don't want to work with someone if you're doing one-on-ones that's going to call you every single day for advice every minute of the day, right? So you're going to want to, I also think about your target audience as like, if you're going to do this on like a one-on-one basis, which it could get to eventually, who is that person that you actually want to work with? Because you don't want to define this to everybody, because you're not going to want to work with everybody. You're going to want to work with people that have got very similar values. Because also if someone comes to you and says like, I'm struggling with anxiety, but then doesn't take any of the actions to change the behaviors, the things that they're working through, like to shift their mindset, the narrative that they're telling themselves, and then shift it into the physical stuff. You don't want to work with those people because you're never going to get the results for them. So like I would also think about like the type of person that's taking the actions. So somebody that is probably has a bit more motivation, maybe has like they've gone through, like they've got to their rock bottom point, for example, and now they're trying to build themselves back up. They never want to go back to that rock bottom. So thinking about it from like the motivation of the person and the type of person that it takes to actually make change, because not everybody is going to be doing this program and actually making the changes, right? So I think maybe alongside the problem, list out the characteristics of somebody that's actually going to be able to take the change, and then that is very quickly going to form your your target audience, because you're going to know the problems that that person is struggling with, and the characteristics of the person that is actually take gold from that A to B, and everything in between. I feel like you don't have to rule anybody out, but you can define it based on you and your vision for the business more so
Yeah.
than. And that's not to say that if someone comes to you outside of that, that you have to exclude them. That's not what a target audience is. The target audience is so that is more so that you can speak to them directly through your marketing and attract them into the thing that you're going to present to them, because you need to speak to somebody. And if you speak to nobody, if you speak to everybody, you speak to nobody. So it's easier if you like target the problem specifically and think about that, the characteristics of the person that's going to take on that whole journey with you. It's going to be way easier for you to create a marketing plan strategy around that, and even come up with the offer based on, right, okay, we know that this person gets overwhelmed really easily, in which case if you give them loads of content for them to just go away and binge on their own, are they going to take action because they're getting really overwhelmed really easily? Or would it be better to do a drip feed course for 6 weeks, for example, where every week they get something new to work on, but they don't see any of the content up until that first week is ended, for example? That would probably be based on what you're kind of saying. Like, that would probably be my suggestion to you, actually, would be to do a drip feed course over a period of time. I don't know how many modules it needs or how long it needs to go. That would be up to you based on like all of the action points that you say will take someone from A to B. But then it might be like, week 1, we're just focusing on this one specific thing. Everybody's going to go and take their action. And then you could maybe even incorporate some group coaching alongside that, because every week you know that you've got a specific subject and you've already mapped out this whole model to take, in which case you've got this on rinse and repeat, right? You could do it, you could run this every, I don't know how long it's going to take, like, but maybe it's every 12 weeks. You literally bring somebody in for 12 weeks, they come in, they go through the course for 12 weeks, you do the coaching maybe every 2 weeks, something like that. And then potentially later on down the line, you introduce more offers that they can upsell into later on down the line. But to start off with, I think that would be a really good business model for you, would be to do like, more so than a membership, a drip feed course. And they could pay monthly still, and it's a 12-week program. They pay monthly, so the fee doesn't sound too high. But I feel like for somebody that is struggling with the challenges maybe that you're going to be presenting, the reduced overwhelm is going to be more beneficial for them to actually get the results from it. How does that sound?
Sounds good. Because my idea at the start, it was to have like a monthly membership, though, but it was not really taken into a journey. Like what I wanted to offer, it was just a container, like a monthly container with just like content that I was like even send it out monthly or maybe weekly, right? But it made me realize on how it's important also to give more a cool container, like so then a kind of a, I won't say like maybe a group coaching, but exactly can be called like this, just like a way to connect with the people in the program or in the membership or whatever the offer will be. But it's also true that I should map out a kind of end goal, right? Rather than just giving a monthly, yeah, I'm still unsure about this, but like I know that makes more sense if I would say, okay, this is a 6 months, 3 months, 12 months, whatsoever, and then of course you can get better every month. But like I never thought about like, because I feel like people can start from different, especially if I'm taking like a group kind of things like related to, let's say, nervous system or like everything that is related to the mind body connection, right? But I never thought about like the real deal of the journey that I'm taking them. So that's where like I also need to define more about the offer itself.
Yeah.
But for sure, it really helped me like what you mentioned to me rather than have, are you recording?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Rather than have like what other people that we know have, like just a monthly subscription because that was the idea, right? Like just to have something monthly, but like maybe map it out like exactly in 3 months, 6 months, but then have more of a journey and yeah, a growth in a way. But
think
yeah,
it,
I'm still
I think
figuring
it
out.
still can be like in theory, right? You could have, let's say you have, I don't know, this is a lot of content to create, so maybe don't overwhelm yourself with this, but let's just say, for example, you've got a 12-week course program, a 12-week journey. Let's call them a 12-week journey. And maybe the first problem that you focus on is getting somebody from that first step of like, they've just started to realize they need to make some changes. What's the first hurdle that they're going to get to? What's the first block? So you take them on that 12-week journey, and that can be the first part of your course or membership. But I would always drip feed this, because I think the type of information that you're sharing could overwhelm someone and then could make them kind of get into a freeze state rather than actually take the action. So first take them on that mini journey. You can put them on a mini journey first of all, and then they're going to get to this point and they're going to be like, well, I've still got all of these other things that I need to work on. So then you're going to take them on another journey, and you don't have to think about this part yet, because first of all, we're only taking them on this first journey, so you don't have to worry about that. But in the terms of what you're saying, in terms of like creating all the concept for the different things, you can then take them on a second journey, and it can be another 3 months, and then it could be another journey of another 3 months, another journey. So you've got a whole year's worth of journeys that you're taking somebody on, because not only you're then thinking about somebody that's coming in and staying with you for lifetime value, not just on like this one-off like course program thing. You can take them on a full journey, but I wouldn't even bother thinking about the other journeys I've mentioned. Just start with one, take them
Okay.
on that journey, because if you're creating that content anyway, let's say you start with this drip feed course slash some kind of group coaching. That's your first offer. You launch that out into the world. You're then going to use that as a test run to see, does this format work? Because even if it doesn't, you've got all of that content that you've created for this course, and then you can shift the format. You can put it into a membership. The other thing that was coming up for me, and I was thinking about as you just mentioned the word membership, was some kind of email membership, because it might be that maybe first of all, whilst you're creating this content, you want to start maybe monetizing something, testing the waters. You could start an email list where it's subscribed, people pay for it. It might be really low value. I was actually part of one very similar to this. It was about $9 a month, for example, and every week I would receive an email that took me on a journey. And it was like, not, instead of having like the whole shebang with the videos and everything, it was just an email, but you're giving me specific instructions to take me on that journey. So it could be that you have different tiers to this. It's that maybe they come through the course and you drip feed them the content with all of the things if they've paid a certain value. Or maybe it could be a membership where they can drop out if they don't want the information anymore, and they just get access to a very like 10% of what you're given in the course via email list. So you could also split it out into different ways of sharing that information.
Yeah,
So,
that's
but
cool.
I would start with creating all the content and then doing that course drip feed process first, I reckon. I feel like that's going to be your best way of getting all the content, because you actually don't have to create all the content first of all, right? So let's say you've got a 12-week course, you create the first month. Whilst people are coming into that first month, that's when you start creating second month. That you're coming into the second month, you're going into the third month's content. So it's not as overwhelming as it would be if you were just wanting to put loads of content onto a membership platform, for example.
Yeah. And from here, I have a question, because like my starting idea was to create this membership in a way that each month it was like a different team, and then different practice and tools and questions, self-reflection, or a bit of course, psychoeducation in that. So people could join anytime and of course drop out anytime. When it comes to a kind of a journey, right? People kind of needs to join the first month, correct? Especially if I'm putting out like a group coaching. So my worry comes when if I don't have enough people, or if I only have like few people, like, and then if someone wants to subscribe because maybe I did a bit of marketing after, the first month, like how could I deal with that?
Then drop the group coaching for the first one you're doing. Just do it as the course, right? Because if you've got the course going anyway, then you don't have that like pressure to sell it, like in terms of if you're coming into the group coaching. But either way, go into it with the mindset that you are going to have people have that goal in there. Not that you're like not going to have anyone in there. Like go into it with the mindset that you are going to have X amount of people in this, and set yourself a target. It can be really low target. Maybe you only want 4 people in there to start off with, because you're doing this whole drip feed program. It's going to be a slightly higher price point than probably the membership that you initially thought about, which means you don't need as many people. Let's say it's like $200 a month to join this program. 200 times 4, it's an okay amount of money to start and test the process. But this first package, I would not ever treat the first thing that you're going to do in your business as the final thing you're going to do, because it is going to take so many different variations.
That's for sure.
So I would maybe go into it and say, right, for this first run, I'm going to test people being on this format, and not necessarily worry about the fact that people might not participate, show up, because who's going to know if it's just a course format and you don't have the coaching part? No one's going to know if anyone else is doing it. You can just keep remarketing it and be like, oh, you can still sign up. You can still sign up until you're hitting the nail on the head with the marketing, you're getting the sign-ups. But go into it ideally with the mindset of you are going to smash it and you're going to get the target amount of people that is going to come into it. Because otherwise you're just kind of setting yourself up for failure from the beginning. I think don't worry about that so much at this point, and just start with the basics, start with the course. And then if it's a case that you're taking someone on a journey just for a course, actually it's evergreen. It's not like you're doing it on a seasonal basis. If they're not having to show up for group coaching calls, you can actually just run that on an evergreen basis. It doesn't need to be that the start date is X date, but I would maybe try and factor that in for the first ones, that you get people in the mindset of, oh, she is doing journeys for 12 weeks and they start on this date, they end on this date, because it's just easier to sell, I would say.
Okay. So yeah, you will recommend a kind of journey of 12 weeks.
Yeah, I think so.
And then focusing on one problem particularly,
Like
or list.
how you were going to do the themes anyway. Like, let's just say you were thinking about doing burnout. So you could do that 12-week program on how to get out of your head and into your body when you're experiencing burnout, for example. So think about the themes, but think about them on a more long-term basis of like that 12-week program. Or it could be 8 weeks, whatever you decide is best for you, 6 weeks, whatever. But I think the longer you can get someone on a retained basis, the easier it is to make money from the thing that you're doing as well.
Yeah, because of course that's the struggle, right? Because I have many ideas and I just need to convince myself that, okay, I start with something and then I can always include other things, right? And it's more about, exactly, it's more about, okay, what I want to start with already and how I want to do it.
If you enjoyed this episode today and you liked hearing me mentor Giulia to figure out exactly what online business model she should be working with to start her online business, this is something that I do on a regular basis with my clients. So the first step for you, if you are trying to figure out exactly what online business to start based on the lifestyle that you want to live, based on your skills, based on your passions, I would highly recommend you make your way over to my Find Your Freedom Model Masterclass. It is completely free, and I'm going to walk you through the exact steps of how to figure out exactly what online business to start. I recommend starting there because, first of all, before we start anything in this process of setting up your online business, you really need to gain that clarity on why you're setting it up, what you want to set up, and what level of lifestyle freedom you want to achieve based on your online business, because that is going to determine everything else that you do and how you set up your business. So that's why I'd recommend you start there. From there, if you are going through the masterclass and you think, yep, I'm ready to start that online business, I do offer a free 30-minute freedom mapping call, which is very similar to the format that I did with Giulia today, going through your goals and figuring out exactly how we can take action to get your business started. So if you are ready to start your online business and you're already serious about this, I highly recommend you going and watching that, so you can jump on a one-to-one free mapping call with me and we'll take it from there. And then you'll get your business started and work your way towards your freedom-filled life. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. I'm excited to see you on a one-on-one freedom mapping call very soon.